Okay, so my name is Alyssa Burke. This will be the second vlogling. This time I'm going to do a vlogling called Phonologizzle. It's a rap about phonology by A-Dog, of course, who is me. So I will just go over the description that I included in my Word document that I submitted to D2L. So I just kind of talked about how phonology has been my favorite unit. I think it's extremely interesting how sounds can come together and influence each other. And I really liked in the podcast how Dr. O had said, "You don't talk like this," because speech sounds are continuous and speech flows together. And that kind of goes with the idea that all sounds influence each other, which is why phonology is just so interesting. Um, in the rap, I kind of outlined how to perform phonological analysis, and I mentioned the steps to take to do that, kind of using the plural rule as an example. And then I also brought up the flow chart that was mentioned towards the end of the PowerPoint about how to determine whether certain sounds are allophones of the same phoneme or if they're different phonemes altogether, and kind of what those mean. I also discussed the concept of natural classes and how they're kind of groups of sounds that have things in common. I think the example given in my song was all of the stops. Also, I finally mentioned phonological organization and the different levels of that, even though it wasn't discussed in huge depth in the podcast, but I thought mentioning it here would be worth it. So I will go ahead and start the rap. Speech sounds are important no matter what the language. Phonology is a word that describes all the sounds are made of, smaller parts that come together to form into awesome patterns. And there are rules that teach you how to do this for all languages, even if it's one from Saturn. First, what is this crazy word phonology, and is there a simple definition? Phonology is the study of sound patterns, and like I mentioned, it's not just in English. Sound patterns happen in all languages and in many situations. But no matter what, there's a set of steps to help you analyze phonology if you're itching. Step 1. Look at the data you've collected. What words are you studying? For the plural rule, look at cats, dogs, and horses, and then you can get to trying. To move to step 2, this step deals with something called identification of the sound being produced differently in different environments, phonological alteration. Step 3 is just as important as all of the others. In the case of the plural rule, here's where you isolate words in the same ending, brother. Step 4 is where the environment gets examined. Where does the alteration occur? Think hard and write it down. It shouldn't be a challenge. Step 5 is to identify the characteristics that govern a change from one allomorph to another. Take a deep breath, because this step might be challenging, and you don't want to feel smothered. In the case of the plural, what are the changes that determine the use of s or z? The answer ranges. That covers the rules for figuring out sound patterns. Like I said, those rules work for all languages, even if it comes from Saturn. Speech is continuous, and all the sounds affect each other. It's not isolated, and phonology helps you see that in all languages, one after another. Next, we're going to move on and talk about a concept called natural classes, alright? This is a group of sounds that have at least one phonetic property in common. That's right. Use brackets to distinguish that the sounds are alike in certain ways, like p, b, t, k, d, and g are all stops. They're in a natural class together, and it will be like that every day. There are many features to keep in mind when determining a natural class. Distinctive features may be considered, and so may phonetic features. Now, I don't want any sass. Because they're both important aspects, that is definitely true. It took me a while to learn them, so let's see about you. There's major class features, like plus or minus consonant or plus or minus sonorant. And there are many manner features, like plus or minus nasal or plus or minus continuant. Place features can be unary or binary, and there are many different kinds. There are also laryngeal features too. Have I begun to blow your mind? So how about phonological organization? There are multiple levels, so don't be mistaken. The lowest of the levels talks about the features. The middle deals with segments, and the highest deals with syllables. The next part we'll discuss can get a little confusing. A flowchart will come in handy, so your brain doesn't start bruising. After you've collected a bunch of words that will act as your data, use this chart to analyze the patterns. Start now, don't wait till later. Look at all the sounds and list out their environments. Is it the same? Yes? Then here's your next assignment. Do they have the same meaning? Yes. Then the sounds are in free variation. And they are allophones of the same phoneme, and you shouldn't have any irritation. If the environments are the same, but the meaning is not, then the sounds are a minimal pair. Their phonemes are different, but it's okay because those sounds are still hot. Are you looking at the environment and seeing that they are different? Then the sounds are allophones of the same phoneme and are on complementary distribution. Before this wrap comes to an end, there are some important concepts left. Like the difference between an allophone and a phoneme, we sure can't forget. The phoneme is a mental category. It's abstract and isn't a sound itself. Allophones are sounds and meanings don't change if they're exchanged when they do not contrast. After going over all these phonological concepts and some cool ideas, it's time to bring this wrap to a close and get ready to say cheers to the concept of phonology. Don't confuse it for phonetics, because the two are both important, but they sure are different.